What happens when one of music's most legendary voices walks onto a talk show stage expecting respect, only to be met with mockery and condescension? In just 39 seconds of one single comment, a beloved icon would expose a host's true colors and walk away from an interview that was supposed to celebrate her legacy. The studio lights were bright that evening, illuminating the stage with that familiar glow that every talk show set has. The audience was buzzing with excitement, their chatter filling the room with anticipation. They'd come to see something special tonight. They'd come to see a living legend. Chaka, the woman who gave us I'm Every Woman and Ain't Nobody, the 10-time Grammy winner, the voice that defined generations, the artist who had shaped the sound of soul and funk music, sat down across from Jimmy Kimmel. She was wearing an elegant outfit, looking every bit the icon she was. Her presence commanded attention. Her energy filled the room. She was there to talk about her new music, her incredible career spanning over 5 decades, her journey through an industry that had seen so many changes. What she got instead was something nobody could have predicted. Nobody could have imagined that this interview would become one of the most talked about moments in late-night television history. Kimmel started the interview the way he always did. Big smile, lots of energy, the audience clapping along. But there was something different in his tone from the very beginning. Something that made you wonder if he actually knew who he was talking to. "So, Chaka," he began, leaning back in his chair like he owned not just the studio, but the entire conversation, the entire world. His posture was relaxed, too relaxed, the kind of casual arrogance that comes from years of being the one with the microphone, the one with the power. "I gotta be honest with you. When my producers told me you were coming on the show, I had to Google you. I literally typed your name into the search bar because I didn't know who you were." The audience went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet, the uncomfortable kind. You could feel the air change in the room. The temperature seemed to drop. Chaka's smile didn't fade, but her eyes, those expressive eyes that had seen so much in her decades in the industry, they told a different story. She shifted slightly in her seat, a subtle movement that spoke volumes. "You had to Google me," she repeated slowly, carefully, letting the words hang there in the space between them. Her voice was controlled, measured, but you could hear the steel underneath. "Yeah, I mean, I'm more of a pop guy," Kimmel continued, waving his hand dismissively, like he was swatting away a fly. Like her entire career was just some insignificant thing that didn't matter. "I listen to today's music, the hits, the stuff on the radio right now. But hey, I'm sure you were big back in the day, right? The 70s, 80s? That was your time, wasn't it? Back in the day. Those 4 words, that's all it took. The disrespect was palpable, thick in the air like smoke. Here was a woman who had more musical talent in her pinky finger than most people would ever dream of having in their entire lives. A woman who had influenced countless artists, who had broken barriers, who had created timeless music that people still loved decades later, and she was being treated like some forgotten relic, some dusty artifact from a museum that nobody visited anymore. "I'm still big now," Chaka responded, her voice steady but firm, each word deliberate and powerful. "My last album went gold, not bronze, not participation trophy, gold. I just finished a world tour, sold out shows. Thousands of people, night after night, singing along to every single word of every single song." Kimmel laughed. Actually laughed. Not with her. At her. It was the kind of laugh that made your skin crawl. The kind of laugh that wasn't about joy or amusement, but about putting someone down. About making yourself feel bigger by making someone else feel smaller. "A world tour? That's cute," he said. And the way he said cute, it was dripping with sarcasm, oozing with condescension. "I mean, how big are we talking? Like small venues? County fairs? Those little theaters in towns nobody's ever heard of? Or are we talking about the real deal here? The audience was uncomfortable now. You could hear people shifting in their seats, the sound of fabric rustling, of nervous coughs, of people exchanging glances with each other, wondering if this was really happening, if what they were witnessing was actually as bad as it seemed. Some weren't sure if this was some kind of bit, some kind of pre-planned joke they weren't getting, some elaborate setup for a punchline that would make everything okay. But Chaka Khan knew exactly what this was. This was disrespect. Plain and simple. This was a man using his platform to belittle her, to diminish her accomplishments, to make her feel small for the entertainment of others. I performed at arenas, she said, her tone cooling by the second, each degree of warmth evaporating from her voice. 15,000, 20,000 seat arenas, Madison Square Garden, the Forum, venues that legends perform at, people who actually appreciate music, people who understand the difference between talent and flash, people who know real artistry when they hear it. Oh, people who appreciate music, Kimmel repeated, making air quotes with his fingers, like a teenager mocking someone at a cafeteria table. Is that a dig at my audience? Because I'll have, my viewers have very sophisticated taste. They watch this show every single night. They laugh at my jokes. They love what we do here. I wasn't talking about your viewers, Chaka shot back, her words sharp and precise like surgical instruments. I was talking about people who know the difference between real artistry and whatever it is you do here. Because what you do, sitting in that chair and mocking people who've accomplished more than you ever will, that's not artistry. That's just mean. Ooh, the tension was thick now. You could cut it with a knife. The air in the studio felt heavy, oppressive, like the moment before a storm breaks. Kimmel's smile twitched. Just for a second, but everyone saw it. The mask slipped. He wasn't used to guests pushing back. He wasn't used to people refusing to play his game. Most people came on his show, laughed at his jokes whether they were funny or not, played along with his games. She participated in his skits and went home grateful for the exposure. They smiled when he mocked them. They laughed when he made them the butt of his jokes. They played the part of the good sport because that's what you did when you were on a talk show. But Chaka Khan? She wasn't most people. She hadn't built a 50-year career by being someone's punching bag. Whatever it is I do here, Kimmel said, his voice rising slightly, a crack appearing in his composed facade. I have one of the top-rated late-night shows on television. Do you understand what that means? I interview the biggest stars in the world. Movie stars, pop stars, politicians, athletes, the biggest names you can imagine. People wait months, sometimes years, to get a spot on this couch. Then why am I here? Chaka asked, tilting her head, her expression a perfect mix of confusion and challenge. You just said you had to Google me. You just said I was big back in the day, implying I'm not big now. You mocked my tour, suggesting it was small and insignificant. So, which is it, Jimmy? Am I irrelevant, some washed up has been from a forgotten era? Or am I one of your big stars that people wait years to see? Because you can't have it both ways. You can't pretend you're honoring me while simultaneously tearing me down. The audience was dead silent now. Not a cough, not a whisper, not a sound. This wasn't going the way anyone expected. Talk shows had a rhythm, a flow, a predictable pattern. Guest comes out. Host makes jokes. Guest laughs. Guest promotes their project. Everyone smiles. Everyone's happy. But this was something else entirely. This was raw. This was real. This was uncomfortable. Kimmel's producers were probably losing their minds in the control room, frantically trying to figure out how to salvage this, how to turn it around, how to make it okay again. Kimmel tried to laugh it off, but the laugh sounded hollow now, forced, like air escaping from a balloon that was slowly deflating. Hey, I'm just having fun here. It's what I do. It's comedy. Can't you take a joke? Can't you have a sense of humor about yourself? A joke is supposed to be funny, Chaka said, her voice calm but cutting through the air like a blade through butter. What you're doing isn't funny. It's disrespectful. There's a difference. A big difference. Jokes punch up, not down. Jokes are playful, not cruel. What you're doing is using your position, your power, your platform to make me look small so you can look big. That's not comedy. That's bullying. Disrespectful? Kimmel's face was getting red now, flushed with embarrassment and anger. I invited you on my show. I'm giving you a platform. I'm giving you airtime. I'm putting you in front of millions of viewers who might not even know who you are. A lot of people, most people actually, would be grateful for that opportunity. They'd be thrilled. They'd be honored. And there it was. The entitlement, the arrogance, the pure, unfiltered belief that he was somehow doing her some kind of incredible favor by letting her sit in his studio, by allowing her to grace his stage with her presence. Chaka Khan sat up straighter. A platform? Baby, I don't need your platform. I've been performing for over 50 years. I've won more Grammys than you've probably even watched. I've influenced artists you interview on this very show. Artists who cite me as the reason they got into music. So don't sit there and act like you're doing me a favor. The audience started clapping. Slowly at first, then louder. They were on her side. They could see what was happening. They could see a legend being disrespected by someone who thought his talk show made him untouchable. Kimmel didn't like that. You could see it in his face. The way his jaw clenched. The way his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Okay, he said, trying to regain control. Let's move on. Let's talk about your new music. What's it called again? I'm sure somebody here knows. He gestured to the audience, smirking, like it was all still just a big joke to him. You know what? Chaka said, her voice calm but powerful. I don't think I want to talk about my new music. Not here. Not with you. Oh, come on, Kimmel said, rolling his eyes. Don't be so sensitive. I'm just trying to have a conversation. A conversation requires respect, Chaka replied. And you've shown me none since I sat down. I've shown you plenty of respect, Kimmel argued, his voice getting defensive. I'm asking you questions. I'm giving you airtime. What more do you want? I want you to know who I am before you invite me on your show, Chaka said, her voice rising now. I want you to do the bare minimum of research. I want you to treat me like the artist I am, not like some nostalgia act you can mock for laughs. Kimmel leaned forward, his nice guy persona completely gone now. You know what? Maybe if your music was still relevant, I would know who you are. Maybe if you had a hit in the last 20 years, you wouldn't be so touchy about a few jokes. The audience gasped. Actually gasped. That was the line. That was the moment he went too far. Chaka Khan stood up, slowly, deliberately. She unclipped her microphone and placed it gently on the chair. What are you doing? Kimmel asked, trying to sound casual, but you could hear the panic in his voice. Guests didn't just walk off his show. I'm leaving, Chaka said simply. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted by someone who clearly doesn't understand the first thing about music or respect. You can't just leave, Kimmel said, standing up now too. We're in the middle of an interview. No, Chaka corrected him. You're in the middle of trying to humiliate me, and I'm choosing not to participate. The band didn't know what to do. Should they play her off? Should they stay quiet? They stayed quiet. Everyone stayed quiet. All eyes were on Chaka Khan as she turned to walk off the stage. This is ridiculous, Kimmel called after her. You're being ridiculous. I didn't say anything that bad. Chaka stopped, turned around, looked him right in the eye. That's the problem, Jimmy. You don't even realize how disrespectful you've been. You think because you have a show, because you have cameras and an audience, that you can say whatever you want to, whoever you want. But respect isn't about power. It's about recognizing someone's worth. And you've shown me that you don't recognize mine. I recognize your worth, Kimmel said, but his voice was weak now, unconvincing. You're a legend, an icon. I said that. No, you didn't, Chaka said. You said you had to Google me. You said I was big back in the day. You mocked my tour. You questioned my relevance. Those aren't the words of someone who respects me. Those are the words of someone who thinks they're better than me. I don't think I'm better than you, Kimmel said, but the way he said it, even he didn't believe it. Yes, you do, Chaka said. And that's fine. You can think whatever you want. But I don't have to sit here and smile while you tear me down for entertainment. She turned to the audience. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm sorry you didn't get to hear about my new music, but I hope you understand why I can't stay. The audience started applauding again. Louder this time. Some people stood up. They were giving her a standing ovation for leaving. Kimmel looked around, confused, angry, embarrassed. Are you seriously clapping for this? She's walking out on the show. They're clapping because they recognize real dignity when they see it, Chaka said. Something you clearly don't. You're making a huge mistake, Kimmel said, his voice hard now. Walking off my show. Do you know how many people would kill to be where you're standing right now? Then invite them instead, Chaka said. Invite people who are willing to be disrespected for airtime. Invite people who need you more than you need them. But don't invite legends and expect them to play along with your ego trip. My ego trip? Kimmel's face was bright red now. You're the one who can't take a joke. You're the one who's so insecure about your career that you can't handle a little teasing. Teasing is what you do with friends, Chaka said. What you did was belittle me. And I'm not your friend. I don't even know you. And after tonight, I'm glad I don't. She started walking again, headed for the exit at the side of the stage. Fine, leave, Kimmel shouted after her. See if I care. See if anyone cares. You're just proving my point. You're irrelevant. Has been. Yesterday's news. Chaka stopped one more time. Turned around one more time. You know what's funny, Jimmy? In 50 years, when people talk about music, they'll still be talking about me. They'll still be playing my songs. They'll still be inspired by what I created. But you? Your show will be forgotten. Your jokes will be outdated, and nobody will remember your name. So if I'm yesterday's news, what does that make you? She didn't wait for an answer. She walked off the stage to thunderous applause. The audience was on their feet now. All of them, clapping, cheering, supporting her decision to stand up for herself. Kimmel stood there, alone on his stage, his face a mix of anger and shock. His band leader looked at him, waiting for direction. His producers were probably screaming in his ear through his earpiece. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of this disaster. Well, Kimmel finally said, trying to compose himself, trying to salvage something from the wreckage of this interview. I guess that's one way to promote an album. But nobody laughed. The audience was quiet now. They'd seen what happened. They'd watched a host attack a guest for no reason. They'd watched a legend defend herself with grace and power. And they'd watched that host reveal exactly who he was when things didn't go his way. Kimmel tried to move on. All right, well, when we come back, we've got a cooking segment. But you could hear it in his voice. The defeat, the embarrassment, the realization that he'd made a massive miscalculation. Backstage, Chaka Khan was already gathering her things. Her manager rushed up to her. Are you okay? Her manager asked. I'm perfect, Chaka said, slinging her purse over her shoulder. I'm not going to let anyone talk to me like that. I don't care who they are or what show they have. That took a lot of courage, her manager said. It took self-respect, Chaka corrected, something that man knows nothing about. Back on stage, Kimmel was trying to continue the show, but the energy was completely different. The audience was distracted. They were whispering to each other. They were checking their phones. Sart probably already texting people about what they'd just witnessed. During the commercial break, Kimmel turned to his band leader. Can you believe that? Can you believe she just walked out? The band leader, a man who'd been in the music industry for decades himself, just looked at Kimmel. Yeah, man, I can believe it. What's that supposed to mean? Kimmel asked. It means maybe you should have done your homework, the band leader said. That's Chaka Khan. That's royalty. You don't treat royalty like that. I was just joking around, Kimmel said defensively. Were you, though? The band leader asked. Because from where I was sitting, it looked like you were trying to make yourself look good by making her look small, and she wasn't having it. Kimmel opened his mouth to argue, but closed it again. Deep down, maybe he knew. Maybe he knew exactly what he'd been doing. The show continued, but it was half-hearted. Kimmel's jokes fell flat. His energy was off. The cooking segment that was supposed to be funny and lighthearted felt forced and awkward. Everyone in that studio knew they'd just witnessed something significant. They'd witnessed the moment a talk show host's arrogance had been checked by someone who refused to be diminished. In the green room, other guests who were scheduled for later in the week were watching on monitors. They saw everything. They saw how Kimmel had treated Chaka Khan. They saw how he'd mocked her, dismissed her, questioned her relevance, and they were taking notes. One of Kimmel's producers knocked on Chaka's dressing room door before she left the building. Miss Khan, I just wanted to apologize for what happened out there. Chaka looked at her kindly. You don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. I should have stepped in, the producer said. I should have stopped it. Nobody could have stopped it, Chaka said. That man showed me exactly who he is, and I responded accordingly. Is there anything we can do? The producer asked. You can tell your boss to think twice before he invites someone on his show just to tear them down, Chaka said. And you can tell him that real stars don't need to diminish others to shine. The producer nodded, knowing that conversation with Kimmel was going to be rough. As Chaka Khan left the studio that night, stepping out into the cool evening air, she felt something she hadn't expected. Relief. She'd stood up for herself. She'd refused to be disrespected, and she'd done it with class, with dignity, with the kind of strength that comes from knowing your worth. Inside the studio, the show wrapped up. Kimmel said his good nights to the audience, but there was no energy behind it, no joy. He knew what had happened. He knew how it looked. A legendary artist had walked off his show because he'd been too arrogant to show her basic respect. As the studio cleared out and the lights dimmed, Kimmel sat in his chair alone for a moment. His producers were already in crisis mode, trying to figure out how to handle the fallout. But Kimmel just sat there, replaying the interview in his mind. He thought about that moment when he'd said he had to Google her. He'd thought it was funny, a good icebreaker, but he hadn't stopped to think about how it would make her feel. And he hadn't considered that maybe, just maybe, she deserved better than that. He thought about when he'd called her tour cute, when he'd questioned the size of her venues, when he'd mocked her relevance. He'd been playing to the audience, trying to get laughs. But at whose expense? And then that final exchange. When he'd called her a has-been. When he'd said she was yesterday's news. The look in her eyes when she'd turned around and delivered that final blow. That prediction that his show would be forgotten, but her music would live forever. She was right. He knew she was right. But admitting that, accepting that, was something else entirely. Because admitting that meant admitting he'd been wrong. Admitting he'd let his ego get in the way of basic human decency. Admitting that his platform, his cameras, his audience, none of that gave him the right to treat people the way he'd treated her. One of his writers approached cautiously. Jimmy, we need to talk about tomorrow's show. Not now, Kimmel said. But we have to figure out how to address this, the writer pressed. I said not now, Kimmel repeated, his voice sharp. The writer backed away. Everyone was walking on eggshells. They'd all seen their boss get put in his place by someone who refused to play his game. Kimmel finally stood up and walked to his dressing room. He looked at himself in the mirror. the same face he'd seen 1,000 times before. But somehow, tonight, it looked different. Tonight, he saw what Chaka Khan had seen. The arrogance, the entitlement, the assumption that being on television made him superior. He picked up his phone. For a moment, he considered calling someone. His publicist, maybe, his manager, someone who could help him spin this. But what was there to spin? The truth was simple. He'd disrespected a legend, and she'd walked out. No amount of spin could change that. Meanwhile, Chaka Khan was in her car, heading home. Her phone was already blowing up. Friends, family, fellow artists, they'd all heard what happened. They were all reaching out to support her. One text in particular made her smile. It was from another legendary singer, someone who'd been in the industry just as long. Saw what you did tonight. About damn time someone put that man in his place. Proud of you, Chaka texted back. Had to be done. I'm too old and too accomplished to sit there and be disrespected. The response came quickly. You're an inspiration to all of us. And that's what it really came down to. Inspiration. Chaka Khan had inspired millions with her music over the decades. But tonight, she'd inspired people in a different way. She'd shown them that it's okay to walk away. It's okay to demand respect. It's okay to stand up for yourself, even when the cameras are rolling, even when the lights are bright, even when walking away might seem like the harder choice. Back at the studio, the crew was packing up. They were all talking about what happened. Some thought Chaka had overreacted, but most of them agreed she'd done the right thing. I mean, Jimmy was really out of line, one camera operator said. Yeah, but she could have played along, another argued. It's just jokes. Just jokes? A sound technician chimed in. The man told a 10-time Grammy winner he had to Google her? How is that just jokes? It's his style, someone else said. He's always like that. Maybe that's the problem, the sound technician responded. Maybe his style needs to change. And that was the conversation happening all over. In the studio, online, in living rooms across the country. Was Chaka Khan right to walk off? Or should she have just laughed it off? But for those who really understood, for those who'd spent their lives creating art and demanding respect for that art, the answer was clear. She was absolutely right. Because respect isn't negotiable. Dignity isn't something you sacrifice for airtime or publicity or a few minutes on a talk show. Chaka Khan had built a career on being unapologetically herself, on singing with power and soul and authenticity. And tonight she'd lived those same values off the stage. She'd been unapologetically herself in the face of disrespect. She'd sung her truth, even without a microphone. The night ended with Kimmel in his dressing room, Chaka Khan in her home, and the rest of the world buzzing about what they'd just witnessed. A clash of egos. A battle of wills. A moment where someone said enough is enough. Because at the end of the day, that's what it was really about. Knowing when to say enough. Knowing when to stand up. Knowing when to walk away. And Chaka Khan, the woman who'd been performing for over 50 years, who'd seen it all and done it all, knew exactly when that moment was. It was 39 seconds into a comment that questioned her relevance. 39 seconds into a host revealing his true nature. 39 seconds into an interview that was supposed to honor her, but instead insulted her. 39 seconds. That's all it took. And in those 39 seconds, Chaka Khan reminded the world of something important. Legends don't beg for respect. They command it. And if you can't give it to them, they'll walk away and take their dignity with them.